Everyone, and welcome to Latin 1, Episode 1. Today we'll be going over declension. So first of all, what even is a declension? So declension is a fancy word to explain how a word declines in a certain language. Today we're obviously talking about Latin. And with Latin declensions, the endings can change how the word is used. So it can be the subject of the sentence, it can be the indirect object, it can be the direct object, and there's a few others, and we'll be going over all that today. Now there are 5 main declensions. Today we're just going over the first one, but there's also small branches. For example, we have second declension, then we have second declension neuter. We're going to go through all of that madness in separate videos. I don't want to overwhelm you guys, obviously. But I should know, if this is your first introduction of Latin, there is a lot of forms in Latin, and I recommend having some sort of memorization tool. Personally, I use Quizlet and Lookit, but that's just me. If you have other ways, maybe flashcards or something like that, definitely use them because you'll need to know it. So first of all, what is nominative, or N-O-M? So nominative is the subject of the sentence. So for example, our example is going to be the girl is good. The girl in this sentence is the subject. It is what the sentence is talking about. What is good? The girl is good. So in Latin, we use specific letters at the end of the word to explain this. So in singular, because yes, of course, Latin has to have singular and plural. In singular, it's puella es bona. Puella is in the nominative case, or the subject. Es just means is, or it is. We're going to be going over verbs in a different video, but that's all you have to know for that for now. And bona is the adjective, but like I said, we're going to be going that in a different video. So for plural, we have puellae sunt bonae. Now you're probably like, hold up, why on earth is it puellae? Why is it not puell-e or something like that? Well, to explain this, we have to go into diphthongs. So what are diphthongs? Well, diphthongs are these weird things where a letter can be like mashed together to make a specific sound. So if you've ever seen, when you're messing around your keyboard, this little thing, or maybe this, or something like that, these are diphthongs. So for the example, like the specific one we're using today is, of course, this one, and it makes an I sound. So instead of puell-e, it's puellae. So that's pretty interesting. Next up, we got genitive, or the G-E-N. The genitive case shows possession. So how do we show possession in English? Well, we normally use a apostrophe S. So for example, the girl's home. Whose home is it? It's the girl's. And we can also just simply say the home of the girl. Now, when you're translating the genitive case, I would 100% recommend you use the home of the girl translation, because it makes it a lot easier. So, for example, domus puellae, which means the home of the girl, or the girl's home. Domus is going to be the subject, and puellae is the genitive, because it's the girl's. When we say it like the home of the girl, it helps us with our placement, and it helps us remember that domus, which means home, if you didn't I already specified that, but just to reiterate it, that domus is going to be the subject of the sentence. And then for plural, we got domus puellarum. Now you're probably like, hold up, why does the A have a weird line over it? Well, that line is called a macron. A macron just pretty much makes the letter longer than it normally would be. So next, let's move on to the dative. Now we're kind of going to talk about the accusative to explain the dative, but let's just jump into this. So the dative is the indirect object. If you know what the indirect object is, well, perfect, you can skip this section. But if you don't, like I always need a reminder of what the indirect object is, because I'm a little slow, but let's move through it with this sentence example. So the boy in this sentence is obviously the subject. We can see it's like the beginning of the sentence, and it's the thing doing the stuff. So just so we know that the boy is the subject, we're just going to use a dark blue, just so We know that that is the subject. Now the indirect object gets the direct object. So in this sentence, who is getting something? Who is receiving something? Who is that kind of thing? Well, of course, that would be the girl. The girl is getting the apple. So we're going to put just the pink under the girl. So the girl is the dative. And what about the apple? Well, like I said, we're going to be talking about the accusative now. Well, the apple is accusative. It is the direct object. The Latin's going to be puer, puellae, malum deret. Now you're probably like, hold up a second. I've seen puellae before. And you're not wrong. It's because it's in the nominative plural, it's in genitive, and it's also in dative. And you're probably like, hold up, that makes no sense. And that's because Latin makes no sense, and the Romans hate you. So how do we know what it is in this sentence? How do we know that puellae is not nominative plural or genitive or dative? Well, you just have to know we have two rules. We can know by word placement. So for example, if it's at the very front of the sentence, so if it was like, for example, puellae boni, for example, we can see that puellae is at the very beginning of the sentence. So we can assume that it would be the nominative or the subject. But other than that, we kind of just have to know by context or like what would make sense in the sentence. Like I said, Latin's a pain. It hates you. So sometimes you just have to make a good guess. And for the plural, it would be puer, puellis, malum deret. So now we're going to go over accusative. Now we've kind of already went over accusative as we just went over what the direct object is, but let's just review it once again. So we see in this sentence, the boy is of course the subject, gave an apple a girl. Now what is what is getting something? What is receiving something? Well, the apple is receiving something. Now you're probably like, how is the apple receiving something? Well, I don't know. Ask the boy. He might be a little bit crazy. Not gonna lie. But that's what's going on in this sentence. Hashtag save girls from apples. The direct object can also be something just simply being acted upon. So for example, if the sentence was, the boy was washing the car would be in the accusative case because it's being acted upon. Or the girl ate beef. Beef would be in the accusative. So for the Latin, we have puer, puellam, malo. Remember the long O because it has the Macron. Deret. And then for plural, puer, puellas, malo, deret. Now finally we're on to the last one, ablative. Now ablative, it's kind of just a trash pile. Like it has a bunch of different uses, but the main one you're going to see, and the one we're going to talk about today, is just simply prepositions. So for example, in something or by something, with something, those are all prepositions. So for example, in the sentence, the apple is in the girl. The apple is going to be the subject, and the girl is going to be the ablative because it's in her. The ablative struggles with a lot of people, but that's the best way you can really understand it. And like I said, it's also just a trash pile, but that's all you really need to know, just for prepositions. So in the actual Latin, we're going to say malum est in puella. Remember the long A because of the Macron. And then we have also malum est in puellis. I'm not really sure how a single apple can be inside of multiple girls, but that's what's going on. This is one very strange apple. But anyways, that's the 5 main things that we have in the declension. There's technically one other called the vocative, but that's just going to be for a whole nother video, just because, one, you don't see it hardly at all. I think in all my time of Latin, I've seen it very rarely, and it's just not necessarily go over in the top 5, but like I said, it does show up sometimes, so I'll have a future video on that. If you guys have any questions at all, please comment, because I would love to help you guys. I don't want you guys to be confused or anything like that. Also, in the description of this video, I have flashcards and some games that you can play to help you get these forms down and memorize it. Because it is a lot of information, and it took me a while just to memorize all this. So, of course, it's going to take a beginner a pretty long time to get this all down. And what I found best is flashcards or just games that just get a lot of repetition in it. So, I recommend doing that. Anyways, if you enjoyed this video, I hope you like and subscribe. And we'll have part 2 up pretty soon. So see you guys later.